I walked into the sleek glass office, my heart hammering against my ribs, every step echoing against the polished floor. The air was thick, almost suffocating, charged with anticipation and unspoken judgment. My eyes immediately found her, my auntie, usually the picture of calm, now seemingly cornered. She sat at the head of the table, flanked by distant relatives whose smiles didn't reach their eyes, and the cold, calculating lawyer who exuded authority like a predator circling its prey. The meeting began, hushed murmurs drifting through the room like smoke, each one carrying a subtle judgment. I noticed smirks and sharp glances from people who had once claimed to care, their faces betraying thinly veiled contempt. "Are you sure you can handle this, Martha?" my cousin sneered, leaning back in his chair, his voice dripping with condescension. "It seems like a lot for you to manage."
The lawyer cleared his throat, straightening in his chair, his hands resting on the stack of documents that seemed designed to intimidate. "If we may proceed with the reading of the property documents," he began, eyes flicking toward me, as if silently asking whether I would step in and challenge the cruelty in the room. A wave of judgmental eyes swept over her, heavy with accusations unspoken but loud in their intent. A relative, unable to contain themselves, made a sharp, cutting remark about her past decisions, a comment meant to undermine her completely. I caught her hands trembling slightly, a subtle betrayal of the composed facade she always wore. My pulse surged as I gripped the edge of my chair, watching dignity slip slowly from her hands like sand through fingers. The lawyer paused, letting the cruel comment linger, assessing her reaction with a detached precision. I swallowed hard, suppressing words that wanted to burst out, rage and helplessness warring within me. The room felt suffocating. Each word was a blade, slicing through respect, each glance a deliberate jab. I noticed the pile of documents on the table, heavy with legal jargon, their intent obvious. Corner her, intimidate her, make her stumble. And yet, beneath the subtle fear, the first cracks in her confident smile began to show. Her lips quivered ever so slightly, betraying the tension she fought to conceal. I recorded every detail in my mind, each smirk, each whisper, each subtle act of condescension, storing it, cataloging it, preparing fuel for the storm I would unleash later. Whispers rippled through the room, the energy shifting ever so slightly against her. I noted every patronizing gesture, every eye roll, every condescending smirk aimed at her. When she spoke, her voice faltered, soft but edged with defiance, a quiet resistance that refused to bow entirely. The lawyer cleared his throat again, narrowing his eyes, sensing the rising tension that hung like static in the air. My auntie straightened imperceptibly, a subtle signal that the fight had not yet left her. And in that moment, I understood. The humiliation was only the opening act, the true reckoning still waiting in the wings. I remember her as a force I barely understood as a child. My auntie, always putting everyone else first, sacrificing herself quietly while the rest of us thrived. I see her in the dim glow of the kitchen late at night, counting bills, scribbling numbers, working tirelessly to keep the family afloat while no one noticed the exhaustion etched into her face. Even back then, betrayal shadowed her steps. Relatives whispered behind her back, subtle betrayals long before money or property ever came into the picture. And yet, she endured, carrying the weight of their judgment as if it were her own burden. The sting of seeing her treated like an inconvenience, like a liability, resurfaces now as sharply as the first time. I recall family gatherings where cruel jokes were aimed at her and she laughed along, forced, masking the hurt that would have swallowed anyone else. I remember nights when she would retreat to her room, alone, letting the tears fall silently while the house slept, oblivious to her pain. She gave up dreams, personal ambitions she once whispered about in soft tones to ensure her siblings could reach theirs. I remember a property dispute years ago where she was outmaneuvered, outwitted by those who claimed to love her. The memory hits like a wound, raw and relentless. Through it all, she handled debt, threats, and deceit quietly, never asking for help, never showing weakness. Friends who leaked secrets, cousins who lied, even those she trusted the most, they all left scars. And yet she endured silently with restrained anger that burned just beneath the surface. Now I see her at the table, calm, calculating, holding back a storm built from decades of injustice. I remember the subtle acts of rebellion she performed when no one was looking, the way she quietly defied expectations, the way she claimed small victories no one else acknowledged. I feel her pride, her resilience, the deep scars that shaped her into the woman she is today. I remember the promise I made to myself, a vow that no one would humiliate her like this again. I recall the moments of quiet strength she displayed during family crises, strength always overlooked, unrecognized. I remember overhearing the relatives talking about her weakness when she wasn't around, their words like knives that only deepened her silence. I feel her pain as if it were my own. Every insult, every slight sharpening, the fire within me. And in this room, in this exact moment, I recognize it. The culmination of years of injustice, condescension, and silent endurance. Every slight, every whispered judgment, every forced smile has led us here. The air hums with tension, and I know the reckoning is about to begin. Her voice steadied, soft yet unwavering, each word carefully measured as she pushed back against the jabs and smirks of the relatives who thought they had the upper hand. There was a quiet fire in her tone, subtle but unmistakable, that made the air around the table feel electric. I could feel the lawyer's tension rise across the polished surface of the table. His eyes flicked toward me briefly, calculating, weighing the potential disruption I could bring if I chose to intervene. The faintest shift in his posture betrayed the unease he felt, sensing that the woman he assumed was timid was anything but. A cousin, overconfident and smug, slid a document toward her, expecting her to falter under the weight of legalese. I watched her inhale slowly, her hand brushing the paper lightly, hesitating but refusing to let panic claim her. She exhaled, steadying herself, and I could see the suppressed fury flaring in her jawline, the tremor she barely contained. The lawyer began reading a clause aloud, his voice precise, formal, designed to trap her legally, to make her stumble. Another relative muttered under their breath, mocking her knowledge, their derision thinly disguised as jest. I felt my blood boil, every insult igniting a deeper fire within me, but I stayed silent, letting her claim the battle in her own way. Then she spoke, a question, calm, controlled, but with an edge that sliced through the tension in the room. The lawyer faltered, mid-sentence, thrown off by the assertiveness that defied expectation. Relatives exchanged uneasy glances, a subtle panic creeping into their posture, their confidence beginning to crack. Her eyes scanned the room like a hawk, sharp and deliberate, memorizing weaknesses, noting who would falter first under scrutiny. Every pause, every tilt of the head, every measured breath hinted at a silent counterstrike forming in her mind. Each word she would choose, weighted and precise. The lawyer cleared his throat, a slight hesitation in his motion, realizing she wasn't the timid woman he had presumed. The air thickened, the tension palpable, and then the debate ignited, heated, fierce, every word a calculated push and pull over property shares. Electricity crackled invisibly in the space between their words. I noticed relatives shifting in their seats, discomfort written clearly in stiff shoulders and restless hands, sensing the subtle tilt in power. And then, casually, almost nonchalantly, my auntie dropped a comment that undermined their entire assumption, a quiet arrow finding its mark. Anticipation surged through me. This was the moment, the beginning of the reckoning. The room seemed to shrink, every whisper amplified, every gaze heavy and accusing, as if the walls themselves were leaning in to watch the inevitable collapse of arrogance. I felt the tension curl around us like smoke, thick and suffocating, yet intoxicating in its promise of justice. My phone buzzed sharply against the polished table, a single vibration cutting through the tension. I glanced down. An ally was on their way, confirming the legal leverage I hadn't revealed yet, a hidden advantage poised to strike at the perfect moment. The lawyer paused mid-sentence, his reading faltering as he sensed an unseen layer to the game unfolding before him. My auntie's lips curved into a faint, knowing smirk, as if silently signaling me to stay back and watch. Then it happened. A careless comment from a family member thrown into the room without thought, unknowingly opening a door for exposure. My mind raced, and I remembered the hidden clause in the property agreement, long ignored, a secret that could now flip the entire narrative. She referenced it casually, almost offhand, mentioning a past secret agreement that made the air in the room shiver. Eyes widened, jaws dropped. The lawyer leaned forward, realization dawning like a sudden storm, and the room fell silent, the weight of disbelief and tension pressing down on every shoulder. I noticed the subtle cracks in the relative's composure. Faux smiles splitting, whispered hisses barely contained, a panic barely suppressed. My auntie seized the moment with precision, her voice sharp, commanding attention, demanding respect that had long been denied. Adrenaline surged through me, my pulse echoing the shift of power in the room. One relative stammered, words failing them as the floor seemed to slip from beneath their arrogance. The lawyer methodically laid out the hidden clause, confirming my auntie's quiet victory, validating every subtle act of endurance and resilience she had cultivated over years of humiliation. Her eyes glinted with quiet satisfaction, the torment she endured transforming into sheer empowerment. A cousin attempted to challenge her, but she shut them down instantly, leaving them flustered, their bravado evaporating under her calculated authority. I felt the shift palpably. My auntie was no longer cornered. She was orchestrating the room, every word weighted, every gesture deliberate. Every move she made radiated power and precision, and in that moment, I tasted the sweetness of justice, silent, unyielding, and deeply satisfying, as the once-cornered woman stood triumphant, unshakable, and untouchable. My auntie's voice rang out, sharp and unflinching, as she exposed decades of favoritism and hidden betrayals in front of everyone. Every name, every slight, every injustice long buried surfaced, leaving the room stunned into silence. I watched as relatives' faces paled, the smugness they had carried so effortlessly unraveling before their eyes. Their manipulations, carefully layered over years, crumbled under the weight of truth. Nara, the lawyer, leaned forward, enforcing the legal clauses we had strategically employed to reclaim control. One by one, documents were laid bare on the polished table, proof of her rightful ownership, her financial security, her undeniable leverage. The cousin who had mocked her earlier shifted nervously, sweat forming at the temples, incapable of interrupting or reclaiming his arrogance. My auntie, calm and composed, dismantled their arguments with surgical precision, leaving no cracks, no room for counterattack. I watched the subtle humiliation replace the condescension that had once suffocated her, a silent justice echoing in every glance. Then she delivered the final blow, a statement of authority so decisive it silenced the entire room, the power dynamic now irreversibly hers. The lawyer nodded in approval, visibly impressed by her strategic composure, and I felt pride swelling deep in my chest, witnessing humiliation transform into triumph. Every whispered insult, every sneer from the past now boomeranged back, publicly exposed for all to witness. The atmosphere shifted, respect flooding the room in torrents, previously withheld but now impossible to deny. I noticed some relatives retreat mentally, defeated, accepting the new power dynamic without a word. She closed the meeting with a firm, unyielding declaration of her rights and boundaries, the room echoing with the weight of finality. The tension released like a storm passing, leaving satisfaction mingled with lingering adrenaline. The lawyer summarized the legally binding victory, methodical, leaving no loopholes, no escape for those who had tried to corner her. My auntie's eyes met mine briefly, a silent thank you passing between us, acknowledging the shared struggle that had led to this moment. The once cornered woman now radiated authority, unshakable, untouchable, and triumphant. I captured every detail in my mind, knowing this was a story that would linger in memory, a narrative no one in that room, or beyond, would ever forget. The office slowly emptied, the air still thick with tension, relatives subdued, murmuring half-hearted apologies and awkward praise that sounded hollow even to their own ears. My auntie stood tall amid the scattered papers, gathering her documents with quiet grace, each movement deliberate, controlled, a portrait of regained authority. I noticed how the room seemed lighter, as if the heavy weight of decades of injustice had finally lifted, leaving space for clarity and respect. She turned to the lawyer, a subtle nod of thanks passing between them, acknowledgement of the respect he now held for her strategic brilliance. I felt a thrill of victory pulse through me, tempered by relief that she was safe, that the storm had passed without harm. A faint, private smile curved her lips, meant only for herself and for me, a silent acknowledgement of shared triumph and endurance. I watched her walk out, every step measured, confidence radiating from her posture, dignity restored in a way that demanded recognition. The cousins who had earlier worn smug grins now shuffled, awkward silence and guilt replacing their arrogance. I caught fleeting expressions of respect in previously hostile faces, subtle but unmistakable, the room finally recognizing the power she had quietly wielded all along. She leaned in, whispering a private word to me, hinting at plans to safeguard the family legacy, her voice calm yet full of unspoken determination. I felt a deep sense of closure, knowing that long-hidden injustices had been confronted and addressed. Her shoulders relaxed, a release of years of suppressed tension, her posture proud, unwavering. The lawyer offered a quiet praise, acknowledging her foresight and courage, impressed by her clever maneuvering without a hint of condescension. I noticed the subtle joy in her eyes, the satisfaction of seeing justice done without unnecessary cruelty, a triumph tempered by grace. As we exited the building, the atmosphere had shifted, the energy lighter, the burden lifted, the air charged with quiet victory. Pride swelled within me as I walked beside her, having witnessed and protected her triumph. She placed her hand on mine, a silent pact that whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them together. The humiliation that had once pressed down on her had been reversed, and the power she had lost for so long was now permanently reclaimed. I sit at my desk, the camera close, my voice trembling with the weight of every emotion as I begin to tell the story. I describe the exact moment my auntie was cornered in that glass office, flanked by relatives and a calculating lawyer, instantly hooking the audience with the tension, the fear, and the injustice she faced. I reflect on the years of hidden pain behind her calm exterior, the quiet strength that had carried her through betrayals, ridicule, and silent endurance. Every glance, every whispered slight, every subtle act of defiance had built to this moment of reckoning. I emphasize the slow burn of revenge, the meticulous planning that allowed justice to be served quietly but decisively. I highlight the critical importance of standing up for those you love when manipulation threatens to strip them of dignity and control. The lawyer's role becomes clear in my narration, an unanticipated protector whose presence and precision tipped the scales, validating every calculated move my auntie made. I share the thrill of watching patience and strategy triumph over arrogance, cruelty, and long-held assumptions of weakness. I appeal directly to viewers, urging them to respect resilience, wisdom, and the quiet power hidden in those underestimated. I close each reflection with a lesson. Justice is often quiet, measured, and deeply satisfying when delivered with intent and precision. I encourage audience engagement. Have you ever witnessed someone reclaiming their dignity in the most shocking way? I hint at future stories, promising deeper dives into hidden betrayals and revenge, reinforcing the emotional roller coaster of humiliation, tension, revelation, and empowerment. I leave a lingering question to hook retention. What would you do if your loved one was cornered like this? Every glance, pause, and word in my narration emphasizes the cinematic storytelling, the careful timing, the tension, the victories small and large. I share the final emotional beat, the pride, the relief, the thrill of silent justice achieved, and invite viewers to subscribe for more stories of resilience, cunning, and unforgettable revenge. I conclude with a promise: every injustice has a reckoning, and every cornered soul can rise. I end on a high, cinematic note, reflective and intense, leaving the audience emotionally invested, hearts racing, craving the next story.